Nerderotic.com.
Welcome back to the Nerdrotic channel. My name is Gary Beekler, and I come to you from Nerdrotic.com and a quick review recap of Daredevil Season 3, Episode 1, Resurrection. And yes, we like to do the first episode, and then later on we do a complete season review. Just a little primer to get you started, let you know how we think in the beginning. I've actually seen a couple episodes, but this one started out great. Hey, listen, Daredevil is a cut above everything else Netflix puts out, and I will explain that after the brief recap. Before we get going, by the way, spoiler warning, I will be spoiling points of just episode 1. And there's not much there, really, to spoil. This is really kind of a get-you-going episode. A little unlike what they've done in the past. It's a good build-up, though, and you can tell it's kind of a slow boil, but not too slow. So we start out. We see how Matt got to the church. We see the building collapsing, and he's kind of it looks like he's falling through hell, basically. And he goes down a drain, and he ends up by the harbor. Cab driver finds him. Yeah, he tells the cab driver, half dead, that he needs to go to a church and Father Lantom. That's where he ends up. You see kind of through his perspective, he can't hear very well. He's kind of coming in and out of consciousness. We see a nurse helping him. They're talking about how damaged he is. And you can hear in the background, kind of muffled, that they're like, hey, we can't take him to the hospital. He's a vigilante. They take him in. So Father Lantom and this nurse are really looking out for him. We get some scenes with Matt after he's recovered a bit. He's completely broken. He's asking for Elektra. Elektra has disappeared. Lantom actually mentions that she had died a long time ago, and he's like, it's hard to explain. She was there. She was right there with me. So it's good to see somebody mentioning the events of the Defenders, because the previous 2 series really kind of glazed over it, not very well. So at least they're acknowledging it exists, even though it wasn't that great. Quite frankly, it wasn't that great. So we find out that Matt is pretty broken up. His hips messed up. He won't, we meet, by the way, the nurse is, Sister Maggie, and she's telling him he won't be doing any backflips. He does confess to her that he is the devil of Hell's Kitchen and explains to her his powers. He had been a kid there. That's where he grew up, and he knew Sister Maggie. So she asks him, like, were you faking being blind? He's all no. But he pretty much tells her that all my other senses got heightened and it's hard to explain. And she kind of rolls with it. We get to see Karen again. Karen is going to Matt's old apartment, and apparently she's been paying the bills and kind of keeping the place up. And she has a little flashback to season 2, and they kind of go, I can't honestly remember if this is a total repeat, or I think they elaborated a little bit on a scene from season 2. Remember, season 2 came out in 2016. So where Matt confesses to her that he is Daredevil, and she's just thinking back on that, and how he's sorry he lied to her and promises he'll never lie to her again. In the meantime, she's flashing back on this while she's standing in his empty apartment, and she obviously misses Matt. Then we see Foggy show up, and she had kind of told him a little lie, saying, would you please meet me here to pack up stuff? And it turns out that she needs help paying the rent and paying the bills to keep it up. Foggy agrees to do it for 1 more month, and then he says for the first time out loud, that bums him out. He said, Matt's dead. And he's all, wow, that's the first time I said it out loud. And an interesting thing that they kind of went back on in the flashback is they really elaborated on Matt being a superhero is an addiction for him. It's the only way to kind of focus and deal with his anger, which we talked about the last couple of seasons. So yeah, Foggy and Karen agree to pay the bills for another month to see what happens. Karen does not believe Matt is dead, and she just has a feeling. So Matt is getting better, and Sister Maggie had suggested that he probably leave at this point because it's it is kind of weird with all the kids there. But Father Lantom takes him to a room downstairs and kind of sets him up in the laundry room. Matt, at this point, can't hear out of his right ear very well. His senses are completely gone. He's actually a blind person at this point. He's tripping over things, falling over things. He's totally broken. Maggie plays some tough love with him in a couple scenes, and she's starting to act kind of motherly. Wonder what that's all about. So yeah, he trips over a couple things. She gives him a good pep talk, like, "Oh, you're really bravely quitting." I really like that. And they also talk about Job. It's very religious, but this is part of the character. So if you haven't read the comic books, this is the character of Daredevil. Frank Miller made him a serious Catholic. He was never really, that was never mentioned before Frank Miller jumped in. And that's what Frank Miller essentially created the Daredevil we know. Before that, Daredevil was a decent character, but he didn't have a lot of layers to him. And Frank Miller, through this his couple of Daredevil runs, revolutionized comic books basically, and everything we get today. He played a huge part in. So mad props to Frank Miller, one of my favorite comic creators and writers and artists, and one of the best of all time. Hope you get better, man. Hope you get better. So Matt is telling Sister Maggie what Stick told him about, a warrior needs to be alone. I can't have any friends anymore. And she's all, it sounds like a guy who needed to get laid, which was a very funny scene. I thought that was funny. And then, Matt, but Matt's still pretty discouraged and down in the dumps. Now, we get a scene with Wilson Fisk, and he's going through his ritual of making an omelet. And it starts out like a flashback of, his old penthouse apartment, but then we see him in his jail cell, and he gets a frying pan, which they would never give anybody in a jail cell, by the way. Just trust me on that one. But hey, it works for the story. What the hell? So he made an omelet. Maybe he got special status. And while he's making the omelet, the guys are like loud outside. He tells everybody to shut up, and everybody quiets down. I thought that was great. And it just shows him staring at his white wall. Then two lawyers come in, and one of them is from Luke Cage, if you guys recognize. And I think he's been in Daredevil before, and he gives Wilson the bad news that the FBI is also going to charge Vanessa if she comes back. So I'm assuming she's out of the country. So they're going to bring charges against her. The whole reason Wilson Fisk went down anyway was to protect Vanessa and to keep her out of this. So this is a huge problem for him, and a huge problem for us getting the Kingpin back. It's kind of a stumbling block, or maybe not. We will have to see. So yes, we have a scene. Again, Sister Maggie, gives Matt some shit for bravely quitting and being kind of a wuss. Matt, of course, calls Job a pussy, which is funny when he's reciting the book of Job and like all the shit he went through in the Bible, which honestly I don't know much about. Okay, didn't pay attention very well in Sunday school. And it turns out that all Matt needed to get his powers back was a neti pot. He gets a neti pot and he clears out his sinuses, which there was probably a huge blood clot in there, and he clears it out, and all of a sudden, when he touches something, he can feel the vibrations, and he starts feeling his senses coming back, and it immediately reinvigorates him. Now, not totally and not spiritually. Throughout this whole episode, Father Lantham asks if he wants to take communion. Matt says no. Matt's done with God. He thought he was God's soldier, but now he's just doing this for him. And as he's training, we get a little montage, and he's starting to get his powers back, and he actually spars with somebody. They get him in a box with somebody, and Sister Maggie talks Father Lantham into doing this because it finally got him out of bed. But he gets his bell rung, so he knows he's not there yet, and he's still, being broken. Matt is completely broken at this point. And he says something to Sister Maggie that's quite disturbing. He says, "I'd rather die as the devil than live as Matt Murdock at this point." So that little, I don't know, bump up of powers and happiness we got in the episode was quickly dashed just with one punch from a boxer. So yeah, Matt is a long way from being the Daredevil we know and love. And he decides to go and break up once he starts getting his powers back, and he's not there. Like he can't even fully hear yet. He decides to go out, and he breaks up a kidnapping, takes on these two guys in like a laundry truck and starts fighting them. Gets his ass kicked pretty good. They were going to leave him behind. He thwarted the kidnapping, so it was a daughter and a father, and they got away. But Matt gets back up, hands the guy a pipe, and puts his arms out and, says he's sorry to God and basically wants the guy to kill him. And the guy was about to do it, and then he heard sirens, and he gives up on it, and they bail. And Matt is left there with a failed suicide attempt. So, yeah. And that's our final scene with Matt. We get to meet Ray, the FBI detective who is going to be in this throughout the season, I believe, and he is financially compromised for he was helping out his sister with cancer who didn't have insurance, and it's caused him to max out all his credit cards. He's probably on the verge of bankruptcy, and we find out, of course, that he's a Fed. He goes into his office. He asks for a performance review early. They said no. And then his boss, she basically says, listen, your FICO score is like 575. That's horrible. We're not going to bump you up because that makes you a recruitment risk. So, which makes a lot of sense. But of course, after calling him a recruitment risk, she hands him the file for the Kingpin and says, hey, you've got Kingpin duty now. And apparently the feds send somebody up once in a while to go talk to Wilson Fisk. Of course, to see if they can get information. And they always get turned down, but it's a ritual that they have to do. So he goes and meets the Kingpin and Wilson Fisk, which they don't call him that in the show yet. Wilson Fisk. And, he starts... talking about, would you do anything for your loved ones? And at first the FBI agent thinks he's being threatened. Then after one of, Wilson Fisk's famous monologues, he kind of figures out, he's like, what exactly are you saying to me? And then Wilson Fisk says, I want to make a deal. And that's where the episode ends. So Kingpin wants to turn snitch. Interesting move. But anything to protect Vanessa is believable. Is actually believable. That's what he would do in the comics. And Vincent D'Onofrio is fucking brilliant. Every second he is on the screen as Kingpin, and he is looking more and more like the Kingpin. He gained the right amount of weight. Just the facial structure. If you see how he's drawn, it's amazing. It's amazing. So clearly the best villain. It's always been like Kilgrave or Kingpin. We're not sure. They're both in the Netflix universe. But no, just in this one little scene, Vincent D'Onofrio has retaken the crown as the best villain. Yes, better than Thanos. Best villain in the MCU. By far. Bar none. And I can't wait to see. I'm so excited that Daredevil's back. It's, because of the Defenders, we had to wait 2 years. We got 2 crappy shows. Honestly, the best thing Netflix has done recently is Punisher. For me, it's Daredevil season 1, Daredevil season 2, Punisher season 1, and then the rest. So far, so good for a start for Daredevil. Well done, Marvel Netflix, and Drew Goddard. I will give Drew Goddard all the credit. Jeff Loeb has got to go, and we will talk about that in our season 1 review. And again, we're going to do a full season 1 review, so please join us for that. That will be, if you're watching this on the date of recording, which is October 19th, the day it came out, that'll be October 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you're watching this in the future, go back and watch the season 1 review, where we will get into comic book differences, major spoilers, what worked, what didn't work. So far, I'm on board. Good job, Marvel Netflix. In the meantime, please check out our other videos. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe. We usually do live recaps 15 minutes after the episode airs. Our live schedule is at nerdrotic.com. I want you all to have a great day and catch you on the Daredevil Season 1 review. Bye-bye.
nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.